because you know everything, because you're a man, and I know nothing because I'm a woman.
You're not a woman.
Oh, you
Everybody take it easy.
Remember that time when a movie about a drag club owner, his partner, and a dinner party from hell became one of the highest grossing comedies of the 90s?
Waiting to applaud you, to applaud the great Starina.
Cannons! What do you do while I'm on stage?
Nothing, I lie here.
And somehow made everyone's parents laugh about topics they definitely didn't talk about at Thanksgiving? That was The Birdcage, the 1996 film that took a French farce, wrapped it in feather boas and political satire, and convinced middle America that Robin Williams in a pink sweater vest was the height of comedy. You had Nathan Lane stealing every scene as Albert, the flamboyant star of a South Beach drag club, Williams as Armand, trying to hold everything together while the world collapsed around him, Hank Azaria as Agador, the housekeeper who couldn't walk in shoes.
Your shoes on, Agador. It's getting late.
But there's no point in my putting shoes on, sir. I never wear shoes because they make me fall down.
And Gene Hackman and Diane Wiest as the conservative senator and his wife who walked into the wrong house at exactly the right time for chaos. The film became a cultural phenomenon, earning over $185 million worldwide and becoming the first major studio comedy to center an LGBTQ plus relationship without making it the punchline.
Let's get it on. I saw that.
It sparked conversations at dinner tables across America, got nominated for an Academy Award, and somehow made "I pierced the toast" a phrase people still quote nearly 30 years later.
Jen, stop trembling. Hold the knife boldly and with strength.
How can I pierce the toast?
Today we're counting down 13 weird facts you didn't know about The Birdcage. The casting battles, the on-set improvisations that made it into the final cut, and the surprising story of how a movie Hollywood thought would tank became one of the decade's biggest hits. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Remember That Time for deep dives into the movies that defined our childhoods, and share this video with someone who still does their best Agador impression at parties. Now let's get into it. Number 13, the studio wanted Tom Hanks and Steve Martin. When Mike Nichols signed on to direct The Birdcage, United Artists had very specific ideas about who should lead. They wanted Tom Hanks and Steve Martin as Armand and Albert, a safe bet after both had massive hits in the early 90s. Nichols said no immediately. According to producer Neil Mackless in a 1996 interview with Premiere, the studio was terrified. They were spending $31 million on a comedy about a gay couple in 1995, the year after the Republican Revolution swept Congress.
My pulse, am I all right?
Oh my goodness, it's very fast.
Let's get you out of the sun. Come on.
Oh, no.
Here we go.
They wanted insurance, and insurance meant the biggest names possible. But Nichols had a different vision. He'd seen Nathan Lane destroy audiences 8 times a week on Broadway in Guys and Dolls, and he knew Lane could bring something Hanks and Martin couldn't. A performance with no distance, no winking, no apology. Albert wasn't going to work as a straight actor playing flamboyant. It needed someone who could find the humanity in the hurricane. Williams was easier. Nichols had directed him in 2 films already, and they had shorthand. Williams could improvise in character for hours, which Nichols knew they'd need to keep Lane energized. The studio pushed back hard. Lane had never carried a film. Williams was coming off a string of commercial disappointments. United Artists wanted stars, Nichols wanted actors. Eventually, Nichols won by threatening to walk. As he later said, he told them they could make a safe movie that nobody remembered, or they could make a dangerous one that might actually matter. Turns out dangerous was the right call. Number 12. Robin Williams wasn't allowed to improvise. If you know anything about Robin Williams, you know the man improvised. It's what made him Robin Williams. Directors would shoot extra takes just to capture whatever chaotic genius spilled out of him. But on The Birdcage, Mike Nichols put him on a leash. Nichols told Williams from day one, stick to the script. Elaine May, who adapted the screenplay, had spent months crafting the rhythm and pace of every scene. The comedy was architectural. One improvised line could collapse the structure. Williams hated it. He later admitted in interviews that it drove him crazy. He'd spent his entire career riffing, finding jokes in the moment, chasing laughs wherever they led. Now Nichols was telling him to trust the words on the page. Here's the thing. Nichols was right. The Birdcage isn't a joke machine. It's a farce, which means the comedy comes from escalation, timing, and characters spiraling out of control within very specific boundaries. If Williams went off on a tangent, the whole mechanism jammed. But Nichols made a deal. Between takes, Williams could do whatever he wanted. The crew would keep cameras rolling, and Williams could improvise for as long as he needed to get it out of his system. Then they'd reset and shoot the scripted version. Some of those improvised takes were legendary. Williams doing impressions, playing with props, inventing entire backstories for Armand on the fly. But almost none of it made the final cut. The few moments that did, like certain line deliveries where Williams adds a small twist, were approved by Nichols first. The result was the most disciplined performance of Williams's career, and arguably one of his best. Armand isn't a collection of riffs. He's a fully realized person trying to hold his family together, and that only works because Williams stayed in the pocket. Number 11, Nathan Lane had to fight for Albert's tears. The emotional core of the Birdcage is Albert's breakdown when he realizes he's being asked to disappear. It's the moment the comedy stops and the stakes land. But that scene almost didn't happen because the studio thought it would kill the movie's momentum. According to Lane in a later interview, test audiences had flagged the scene as too heavy. Studio executives wanted it cut or shortened. They argued that people came to the Birdcage to laugh, not to cry, and Albert sobbing in his bedroom was a buzzkill. Mike Nichols disagreed. He told the studio that without that scene, the entire film was just a string of jokes with no weight. The audience needed to feel Albert's pain, or the happy ending wouldn't mean anything. Lane backed him up. He'd been fighting his whole career against being reduced to comic relief, and Albert crying wasn't weakness. It was the opposite. It was the moment Albert became more than a collection of mannerisms, the moment audiences saw him as a person who'd been hurt. Nichols tested the film with the scene restored, and something unexpected happened. The scene didn't slow the movie down, it deepened it. Audiences laughed harder after the scene because they cared more. The stakes were real. The studio relented, and the scene stayed. Lane later said it was the moment he realized he could carry a film, not despite the emotion, but because of it. Number 10, Hank Azaria studied Guatemalan housekeepers for Agador. Agador Spartacus, the housekeeper who can't wear shoes and sets the apartment on fire, could have been a one-note joke. Instead, Hank Azaria turned him into one of the film's most memorable characters, and he did it by doing his homework. Azaria didn't just show up and play wacky. He spent weeks before filming observing housekeepers at a hotel in Los Angeles, most of them immigrants from Guatemala and El Salvador. He listened to their speech patterns, watched how they moved, studied their mannerisms. Then he did something risky. He built Agador from those observations, but pushed everything slightly past reality. The accent wasn't quite accurate. The physicality was exaggerated. Agador existed in the same heightened space as the rest of the film, but grounded in something real.
Good evening. I am Spartacus, the Goldman's butler. Please, come in.
Nichols loved it, but gave Azaria one note. Agador needed to be sexy, not funny sexy, actually sexy. Azaria thought he was joking. Nichols wasn't. He explained that Agador's confidence was the joke. He walked around in a thong and thought he was the hottest thing alive, and that delusion had to be played completely straight. The shoes became a running gag, but they weren't scripted initially. Azaria suggested it during rehearsals. He'd noticed that one of the housekeepers he observed always kicked off her shoes the moment she got to work, and he thought Agador would do the same. Nichols added it to the script, and suddenly Agador had a physical signature that defined every scene he was in. Years later, Azaria admitted he worried the character might age poorly, that audiences would see Agador differently through a modern lens. But the character has endured because Azaria never played him as a stereotype. He played him as a person who happened to be absurd, which is very different from an absurd person who happens to exist. Number 9, Gene Hackman almost walked off set. Gene Hackman took the role of Senator Keeley because Mike Nichols personally asked him to, and Hackman owed Nichols a favor from way back. But Hackman hated making comedies. He was miserable for most of the shoot, and halfway through production, he nearly quit. The problem was Nathan Lane. Not because Lane did anything wrong, but because Lane was so good that Hackman felt like he was drowning. Lane would hit his marks, deliver his lines with perfect timing, and generate laughs that Hackman couldn't match. Hackman was used to being the most powerful presence in any room, and suddenly he was the straight man watching someone else steal scenes. During the dinner party sequence, which took 5 days to shoot, Hackman pulled Nichols aside and said he wasn't sure he could finish. He felt like a supporting player in someone else's movie, and he wasn't built for that. Nichols, who'd directed some of the biggest egos in Hollywood, knew exactly what to say. He told Hackman that his job wasn't to compete with Lane. His job was to be the rock that the chaos crashed against. Without Hackman's grounded performance, Lane would just be noise. The comedy worked because Hackman refused to play it as comedy. Hackman thought about it overnight and came back the next day ready to finish. But his discomfort never fully went away. In interviews afterward, he rarely talked about the Birdcage with enthusiasm. He respected the film, but making it had felt like work in a way his dramas never did. The irony is that Hackman's stiffness is exactly what makes Senator Keeley funny. He's a man completely out of his depth, trying to maintain control in a situation that's already escaped him. Hackman's discomfort on set translated directly into the character's discomfort on screen, and it's perfect. Number 8, the dinner party scene was shot in real time. The dinner party, the sequence where everything goes wrong at once, is the centerpiece of the Birdcage. It's 18 minutes of escalating chaos, and Mike Nichols shot it like a stage play. Most directors would break a scene like that into dozens of setups, close-ups, wide shots, coverage from every angle. Nichols did the opposite. He put 4 cameras in the room and let the actors perform the entire sequence straight through, over and over, for 5 days. The actors loved it. Nathan Lane later said it was the closest he'd ever felt to doing theater on a film set. They could build momentum, play off each other's rhythms, and let the comedy escalate naturally instead of stopping and starting every 2 minutes. But it was exhausting. Performing at that intensity for 12 hours a day meant that by day 3, everyone was fraying. Diane Wiest forgot her lines twice. Gene Hackman snapped at a crew member. Robin Williams had to take a walk between takes just to reset. Nichols didn't care. He knew exhaustion would help the performances. The characters were supposed to be fraying, and if the actors were actually tired and stretched thin, it would read on camera. The gamble paid off. The dinner party feels lived in and chaotic in a way that's hard to fake with traditional coverage. You can feel the sweat. The actors aren't just reciting jokes. They're surviving a disaster in real time. When Nichols finally called wrap on the sequence, the entire cast and crew applauded, not because they were happy to be done, but because they knew they'd just shot something special. Number 7, the drag performers were real South Beach queens. Mike Nichols didn't hire actors to play the drag queens at the Birdcage nightclub. He hired actual drag performers from South Beach clubs, and he let them design their own numbers. The production put out a casting call at clubs around Miami, and dozens of performers showed up to audition. Nichols and choreographer Vincent Patterson picked the ones with the strongest stage presence, then told them to bring their own costumes, their own music, and their own routines. The result was authenticity that you can't fake. Those performances aren't actors imitating drag. They're drag artists doing what they do every night, just with better lighting and more cameras. Some of the performers had never been on a film set before, and the technical side intimidated them. But Nichols treated them like professionals, giving them the same respect he gave his Oscar-winning leads. He asked for their input on blocking, listened to their ideas about how the club should feel, and made sure they were credited properly. One performer, who went by the stage name Darlene, suggested the opening number should feel less polished. She told Nichols that real drag shows had messy moments, technical glitches, queens adjusting their wigs between songs. Nichols loved it and incorporated those details into the blocking. The authenticity extended behind the camera, too. Several South Beach drag artists were hired as consultants to make sure the club felt real. They advised on everything from the lighting design to the way drinks were served. When the film came out, those performers became local celebrities in Miami. The Birdcage wasn't just a movie to them, it was documentation of their world at a time when mainstream Hollywood rarely acknowledged they existed. Okay, we're about halfway through this video, and I need to take a quick pause because I have to ask, did The Birdcage change how you thought about comedy? Was this the first time you saw a mainstream film treat LGBTQ plus characters as people instead of punchlines? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're down there, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the movies that shaped us. Now let's get back to the countdown with number 6. Number 6, Diane Wiest improvised her entire drunk scene. Diane Wiest plays Louise Keeley, Senator Keeley's wife, and she's spectacular in the role, prim, uptight, and completely unprepared for the hurricane she's walked into. But there's one scene where she cuts completely loose, and it wasn't in the script. During the dinner party, Diane Wiest gets progressively drunk on the soup Albert has prepared, which is loaded with alcohol. The script had a few lines about her getting tipsy, but Wiest saw an opportunity. She asked Nichols if she could play the escalation bigger, really committed to the idea that this repressed woman was unraveling. Nichols told her to try it, and they'd see what happened. What happened was magic. Wiest started improvising small physical bits, leaning too far back in her chair, losing track of her fork, laughing at things that weren't funny. She played Wiest's drunkenness as liberation, a woman finally letting go of decades of tightly wound control. Nathan Lane, sitting across from her, had to work to keep a straight face. In the wide shots, you can actually see him biting his lip to avoid breaking. Nichols kept the cameras rolling and let Wiest cook. Some of her line deliveries in that sequence are slurred just slightly, and her timing is off in a way that's perfect for someone who's had too much to drink. The best part? Gene Hackman's reactions are genuine. He had no idea Wiest was going to go that big, so his stiff discomfort is real. He's watching his screen wife fall apart, and as Senator Keeley, he's horrified. As Gene Hackman, he's probably equally horrified. When Nichols called cut, Wiest asked if she'd gone too far. Nichols told her it was the funniest thing he'd filmed all week. Number 5. The pink sweater vest came from Robin Williams' closet. Armand's pink sweater vest, the one he wears while trying to teach Albert how to act masculine, has become iconic. It's the visual punchline to every lesson Armand tries to give. He's telling Albert to butch it up while wearing the least masculine outfit imaginable. That sweater vest wasn't a costume department choice. Robin Williams brought it from home. According to costume designer Ann Roth, Williams showed up to a fitting with a bag of his own clothes and started pulling things out. The pink vest was in there, and Roth immediately saw the potential. It was perfect because it wasn't a costume. It was something Armand would actually own, something he'd wear without thinking twice, because to him, there was nothing remarkable about it. Nichols loved it for the same reason. Armand's obliviousness was the joke. He's so comfortable in his own skin that he genuinely doesn't understand why walking around in a pink sweater vest might undermine his credibility as a masculinity coach. The vest became so associated with the film that it ended up in the Smithsonian as part of an exhibition on LGBTQ plus cinema history. Williams joked that it was the gayest thing he'd ever done, and he'd played a cross-dressing nanny. Number 4. Mike Nichols made Nathan Lane watch the French original 50 times. The Birdcage is a remake of the 1978 French film La Cage aux Folles, and Mike Nichols made Nathan Lane study it obsessively. Not to copy it, but to understand why it worked. Lane later said he must have watched the film 50 times during pre-production. Nichols would sit with him and pause the film at specific moments, pointing out beats, rhythms, and the way actor Michel Serrault built emotional complexity into a performance that could have been purely camp. Serrault's Albin was more fragile than flamboyant, and Nichols wanted Lane to find that same vulnerability. Albert couldn't just be loud and funny. He had to be someone audiences rooted for, someone whose pain felt real. But Nichols also warned Lane not to imitate Serrault. The French film was a farce rooted in European sensibilities. The American version needed to feel different, bigger, more heightened. Lane had to find his own Albert. The breakthrough came when Lane stopped thinking about Albert as a drag queen and started thinking about him as an actor. Albert performs every moment of his life. He's not pretending to be someone he's not. He's fully committed to being exactly who he is, just turned up to 11. That shift unlocked the character. Lane found the humanity underneath the performance, and suddenly Albert wasn't a caricature. He was a person playing a character, which is very different from a character who happens to be a person. Nichols later said that Lane's Albert was better than Serrault's Albin, which is high praise considering the original won 3 César Awards. But Nichols wasn't comparing performances. He was acknowledging that Lane had taken an iconic role and made it completely his own. Number 3. The film's success shocked everyone, including Mike Nichols. When The Birdcage opened on March 8, 1996, Hollywood was braced for disaster. The industry had convinced itself that mainstream American audiences wouldn't show up for a comedy about a gay couple, no matter how famous the stars were. The tracking numbers looked okay, but not great. United Artists had tempered expectations, predicting a $12 million opening weekend. Respectable, but not a hit. Then the numbers started coming in. The Birdcage opened to $18.3 million, the biggest opening for a comedy in over a year. It played everywhere. Red states and blue states, cities and suburbs. Audiences loved it. More importantly, they kept coming back. The film stayed in the top 5 for 7 weeks. It crossed $100 million domestic by May, a threshold that seemed impossible for a film with this subject matter. Internationally, it was even bigger. By the time the theatrical run ended, The Birdcage had earned $185 million worldwide against a $31 million budget. Mike Nichols admitted in interviews that he was stunned. He believed in the film, but he didn't expect Middle America to embrace it the way they did. The film played in small towns where people had never seen an openly gay character in a mainstream movie, and they laughed anyway. What made it work? The film never apologized for its characters. Armand and Albert weren't the butt of the joke. The conservatives were. The absurdity came from intolerance, not identity. Audiences responded to that. Critics caught on too. The Birdcage earned an Academy Award nomination for art direction and was named one of the year's best comedies by the National Board of Review. Nathan Lane earned a Golden Globe nomination and won the Screen Actors Guild Award for Best Actor. For a film Hollywood assumed would tank, it became one of the most successful comedies of the decade. Number 2. Elaine May rewrote the script during filming. Elaine May, who adapted the screenplay, is a legend in Hollywood for 2 things: being a brilliant writer and refusing to stop rewriting even after cameras start rolling. The Birdcage was no exception. May was on set almost every day, watching takes and tweaking dialogue. If a line wasn't landing, she'd rewrite it between setups. If a scene felt off, she'd restructure it during lunch. Mike Nichols trusted her completely, so the script was constantly evolving. Nathan Lane later called it both thrilling and terrifying. He'd memorize his lines, show up to set, and discover May had changed half the scene overnight. Sometimes she'd hand him new pages 5 minutes before they rolled cameras. But here's the thing. May's instincts were almost always right. She was responding to what the actors were giving her, shaping the script to fit their strengths. A joke that looked good on paper might not work in Robin Williams' mouth, so she'd adjust it. A beat that felt slow in rehearsal would get tightened before they shot it. The Pirin tablets joke, one of the film's most quoted lines, was a May rewrite. The original script had Albert taking aspirin. May changed it to Pirin, a fake medication, because it was absurd, and because Albert believing Pirin tablets were real told you everything about his relationship with reality. Gene Hackman hated the constant rewrites. He liked to lock his performance early and repeat it. May's process meant nothing was ever locked, and it threw him off. But Hackman later admitted the final film was better because of May's obsessive tinkering. The script that won May awards and critical praise wasn't the script she turned in. It was the script she wrote during production, responding to actors, adjusting rhythms, and chasing the perfect version of every scene. Number 1, the toast scene wasn't supposed to make the movie. The most quoted line from The Birdcage is Albert's panicked confession. "I pierced the toast." It's become a cultural touchstone, a meme before memes existed, and the kind of line people shout at each other in kitchens 30 years later. And here's the thing, it almost got cut. The scene where Albert attempts to make dinner and fails spectacularly was always in the script, but the toast line was a late addition. Nathan Lane improvised it during rehearsals as a throwaway, something to fill space while they blocked the scene. Mike Nichols laughed, but he didn't think much of it. It was funny in the room, but he wasn't sure it would play on screen. The joke was so small, so specific, that it felt like it might just evaporate in editing. They shot multiple takes, some with the line and some without, giving Nichols options. During post-production, editor Arthur Schmidt wanted to cut it. The scene already ran long, and the toast bit felt like an unnecessary detour. Nichols wasn't sure. He tested the film with the line in, and during that test screening, the toast got one of the biggest laughs in the entire movie. Not just a chuckle, a full audience roar. Nichols and Schmidt looked at each other, stunned. They tested it again without the line, and the reaction was noticeably weaker. Audiences missed it, even though they'd never heard it before. The line stayed in, and it became the film's signature moment. Nathan later said people shouted at him on the street more than anything else he's ever done. A throwaway improvisation during rehearsals became the line everyone remembers. That's the magic of the Birdcage. The smallest moments ended up mattering most. And there you have it. 13 weird facts you didn't know about the Birdcage. Which one surprised you the most? And which scene from the movie do you still quote at dinner parties? Hit like if this brought back some memories. Subscribe for more deep dives into the movies that shaped us. And share this video with someone who still can't walk by toast without making an Albert reference. Until next time.